Hey guys, welcome back to the Real Estate Startup Podcast. I'm your host, Benjamin Goodpasture, co-host Michaela Potterbaum, and we're excited to have an amazing day, conversation, hear more of Mikayla's story. We're going to deep dive into her real estate journey today. But first, hey, how was this week? What's going on in your world?
Hey, hello. Yeah, this week was good. I wasn't on the slopes like you guys were. Oops, spoiler alert. I was hanging with my family and working on some real estate deals. So it felt good.
Okay.
Some of it's undetermined where it's landing yet, so I probably can't go into detail. But always working on deals over the weekend. Still just out there looking. So yeah, it was good. It was a good time.
Can you give us some hints, some little clues of what you're working on?
Yeah. So one of the things I'm working on is there is a very, very cool A-frame about an hour from Nashville that I have my eyes on, and I'm chatting with the owner about possibly buying. It is a very popular Airbnb already. So we will see if there is a possible sale that can happen, but yet to be determined. So
Have you started looking into the Smokies at all?
I have. I've looked a little bit into it. I think just being, kind of doing a deep dive into it probably more last year, and then kind of seeing the numbers for short-term rentals dip pretty significantly out there. I have some friends that own some stuff out there. They've had a little bit of a hard time keeping it rented. So my other rental is in the Panhandle of Florida, and it's done decently well. So if I'm going to do the Smokies, I think it's got to be like a very creative, like not high interest situation for sure. Maybe even like a smaller tiny home thing, something like that. Or a cabin that can be flipped that just needs has a lot of value add options. So that's kind of where I'm at with the Smokies. But yes, it's definitely on my radar.
Yeah,
for sure.
Maybe like multiple units, something like that, or a boutique hotel.
Yeah, boutique hotel would be amazing.
Okay, sure. Nice. Yeah, for us, we were on the slopes, like you said. It's apparently a thing now called Ski Week. I don't know if you knew that, but President's Day is a holiday last Monday, not yesterday, but the one before. And so our kids were out of school. So, you got to figure out something to do. And so that's why we're like, let's go up to Mount Shasta because we have a cabin there. And it was great. I mean, Bluebird days, just beautiful. First time getting our kids in ski lessons. We've got a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old.
So cool.
We kind of just messed around with them the first day on like the bunny hill. And our son Noah, who's the oldest, he was just killing it, just having fun, just going by himself. And then London, our 5-year-old, was kind of like, I don't know, she didn't look very solid. She was just like kind of falling over a bunch. And more so just staying right in between Kylie's legs as she skis down. But then like the next day we get her in a lesson, she's just ripping. And the lesson after that, she's up on the mountain, just, the instructor said a lot of good things. Like, she's the best in the group. You should give her a private lesson. So cool. She's, picking up on it really quickly. That was amazing. Just seeing them just love it and just want to do it nonstop. And, I think it's just going to open up a lot more fun and family stuff, to do. But
that's so cool.
Yeah, it was super fun.
You got to be so proud of your. So great.
Definitely proud. So
cool.
So that was our weekend, and it was cool. We stayed at our Airbnb, and it's one of those things that's like such a blessing to have that. And it's it's an A-frame. And I'm just sitting there. I'm like, man, this is like so comfortable. And we have a big family, so it's kind of tight, but it works somehow for 6 people.
Hey, I mean, that's the thing. When you're on vacation, you can kind of just squeeze a little bit more. It's not where you're living, but that feeling of just like, dang, like I made this house happen and I get to enjoy it now. Like, how is that feeling for you guys?
Yeah, it's good. And it's nice that it's small because there's less space for the kids to like have their stuff like spread out. You know, you don't have all their toys. So it feels a little bit more not as chaotic as home could feel, which is nice. And the three bigger kids sleep in a bed together, and then we have our own room with the baby.
So great.
So it works.
So fun.
But hey, enough about me. I want to jump in and hear your story with real estate. So let's start off with just, how'd you get started in real estate? What attracted you to it? Just a little bit more about, that and your background.
Yeah. So let's dive in. So I definitely am, I'd say I'm relatively new to real estate. I'd say the last 3 years, I have done a lot more research and just learned as much as I could, especially during COVID. It kind of is when it just came way more to the forefront for me. But before that, it was for about 18 years now. I've been a professional photographer, and I shot weddings for many, many years all over the world. So yeah, just really creative by nature. Before even doing photography, I traveled as a drummer. So I was a worship drummer for a worship band and did a lot of conferences and stuff like that. And always loved music, and then kind of eventually found photography, and that took me around the world, and eventually moved to Norway, where I had some connections there, worked for a nonprofit, and it kind of from there, I just fell in love with the landscape of Norway and the mountains, and just chasing wonders certainly become one of my favorite pastimes. So I think just waking up in that kind of beauty when I lived in Norway, it did something that just reminded me that you don't really have to settle for like a non-beautiful life. And so I think since then, I've just been really driven to find what makes me come alive and just figure out a way to make that the thing I go after, and hopefully find a way to monetize that. So what happened was I lived in Norway from 2013 to 2016, fell in love with the country and learned the language, and was pretty settled in there. And then my visa ran out and I had to move back to America. So I came back to the States. I settled in Tennessee, and I'm originally from Indiana, but I just had a lot of friends here in the Nashville area. So it made sense to just be here. So at that point, I started a company called Promise Mountain, and that is a upscale elopement planning company where we have teams in Europe and across the US and in Costa Rica where we plan and we photograph and we officiate mountaintop elopement weddings in all of these places. So that was kind of a wild journey, and I've really spent the last 7 years building that up. And then about 2 years ago, I just got to the point where I was like, I love this concept. I love having this kind of business in my world, and it's been really fun to build it. But I started to learn more and more about real estate, and I was like, I am so curious about this. And it just felt like kind of this distant dream of like, that'd be cool, but like, I probably have to have a lot of money to do that.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know how it'd be possible. And so I just dove in, right? Like the fire hydrant, we just opened it on up, and I just drank in everything I could. I started listening to everything with, every podcast I could from Bigger Pockets, or reading a ton of books. And this was still kind of when the pandemic was like a thing. So social life was still not maybe as it was before. And I just took every moment I could to just learn. So with that, I just started looking around. And as I was looking around, that's actually kind of when I saw what you were doing with real estate from a distance in Reading. And it was really inspiring me. So, we connected on one of your mentorship courses that you did, and that really inspired me to really, really go for it.
Yeah.
So I was very grateful for that inspiration. But yeah, I mean, I was living here in the Franklin, Nashville, Tennessee area, and felt a little bit like an island. I didn't really know many people here that were doing this. And now in hindsight, I'm just meeting more and more people that are just they're like, we feel like an island too. And so we're just trying to gather the islands and create more of a community. But thankfully I met a group of people in Franklin that are, they're faith-based investors. And so they have a lot of the same core values that I do. And I just got connected with them. And a lot of them had already done a fair amount of real estate investing. And when I kind of just stumbled into this group, I was just dumbfounded because I had been on my own for now a year or two, just trying to figure this stuff out. And these people had already bought, some of them had already bought, dozens of houses and multifamily. And so I just had more of a place to ask my questions and just dive in. So through that group, I found a private money lender, and I learned about hard money lending, and I learned about the Burr method and all the things that we'll talk more about in this podcast. But for me, that was just sort of a gateway for possibility on a local level with investing for sure.
Like the community is what, it was like the incubator to really taking you to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. Because up to that point, I think, at least for me, and I think probably a lot of people can relate, it's like, you can read all the books that's out there and you can listen to all the podcasts, but until you do the thing and dive in, it's really easy to just keep circling on this hamster wheel of I think I know how to do this, but I'm scared to try.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of in that position. And then in 2022, I had a unique opportunity come where my grandma, who was living here in the area, she had to move out of her home and into my parents' home just to be more just to be closer to family. And she was just getting older. And so her house was going to be sold just as is. And it's just like a brick ranch house in a not super cool town around here. And I was like, man, this is not the town or house I would have chosen for my glorious start to real estate. But I saw the possibility and I asked my family, I was like, what if I just basically take over this house and I take over payments and we get the value of the house from her realtor as is. And I just put some of my own money into it and, spice the place up a little and make it a little bit nicer. And she was, it's not that it was in bad condition. It was actually in pretty good condition, but it just had some updates that could help, have a better value. Right. So I probably took $10,000 or $12,000 of my own money and just went after it and really just started painting walls and anything I could see that was a simple thing that could be done to maybe just be more appealing to a buyer. I just did it. And that was when I really kind of got my first taste of a mini flip sort of. So I took about 6 weeks and just painted the outside of this house. I hired people off Facebook Marketplace. I just was like, I don't really know people to do this. I'm going to just find people and negotiate and go for it. And so now in hindsight, I'm like, man, I just so risky, but it's fine because it was the thing that got me in the door. Right. So I had a really great experience. I mean, even in that one first flip I had a flooring guy that I had found who was super sketchy, but I was like, it's fine. He's the best deal. I got to do it. And so we had this bonus room that it used to be a garage and it was kind of this extra space that I was turning into almost like an in-law suite type thing because it had a separate entrance. And so I was like, hey man, we need you to do the floors here. And I had bought this, which I will never do again. I bought this glue on laminate flooring. And I was like, I need you to put this floor on. I don't want to do it, but I'll do it for you. And I'll do it for this really good price. It's okay. Because I was talking to other people and the flooring people are like, I don't touch glue on flooring. And I'm like, why not? I didn't know. It's the worst. The worst. So my aunt was over there painting in and out of the project, helping me out with it. And one day she calls me and she's like, hey, have you been to the house lately? I'm like, I haven't been there today. She's like, well, I just walked in and there's she's like, it's nobody's here. There's some tools left. And then the flooring is just here, and then there's all this glue that's just left open and seems to be drying. And I was like, well, that's weird. And so I came later and basically dude had decided halfway through the job, he just didn't want to do it. And he just left. And so there's
Did you pay him?
I hadn't paid him yet. No, I hadn't paid him yet. So it was like, it's not like I lost money, but there was certainly a loss of momentum. And he basically ruined the floor because he left exposed glue that just like dried across this floor. So lesson learned there. And that was after they had popped a water main and flooded the entire room. And, so I was like, cool. Flipping houses is fun. This is cool.
Hey, they flooded it. Did you ever get a hold of them and did they pay for that?
No, they didn't pay for it. They were like working on the floor and they popped the water line, the toilet water line, and it just sprayed water into the bathroom and across the whole room and flooded the whole room. So that was after all that had it was terrible. But the point is that I hired somebody else and they fixed it and we were good and we moved on. And I was like, hey, if that's like the horror stories people tell me about, like, we're good. That's fine. Like it was kind of stressful, but we're good. I'd also come out of working in the wedding industry with like high-end brides for many, many years. And if you can handle dealing with like a high-end stressed bride and her mom, like you can certainly flip houses. It's no problem.
Bridezillas.
Yeah. Thankfully, most of the brides were cool, but we had a few parents here and there.
So how did you approach your grandma about this deal? Like, how did you structure it financially? How did you have that conversation?
Yeah. So my grandma was, at the time, she was coming closer to 90 years old, and she's very sharp. She's still very sharp mentally, but she's just not able to really handle the big decisions for her, life when it comes to this kind of a thing. So I was actually more talking with my dad about it because he was helping her out. And so I approached him and was just like, kind of explain the scenario. And he understood all of that too. Mm-hmm. And so I think the thing that was helpful for my family was for me to say, I'll take over payments immediately. And she doesn't even have to clean the house. She doesn't have to, she can literally just leave it as is and she can move immediately. So she didn't have to get the house market ready. She didn't have to clean it up. She just left. So I think that made it a lot easier for her. And she had a realtor that she really liked working with when she bought the house. So she asked me to use this particular realtor. So that was part of the agreement we had.
So when you said you took over payments, were you making her mortgage payments?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how long did you do that? And then did you actually buy it from her and get a loan, or how did that all work?
No, we just kind of did it in the family. I took over payments, so she didn't have the burden of that. Immediately I took over. And I really the whole project, I was in and out in about 6 weeks. And so she moved right away out of the house. And then it was when we officially sold the house in a few months later, 3 or 4 months later, she got the payout of the original amount that her realtor had said, hey, this is what the house is worth, before she did anything to it. And that I just kept the profit past that.
Gotcha. So you took over payments.
Yeah.
You brought in your own money to flip it, and then you listed it for sale. Mm-hmm. And you had an agreed upon purchase or sales price, your grandma. So you gave her that money and then you kept the profit.
Exactly. So this is right as the market was starting to shift and go downward. So we really didn't know if it was just going to crash and I was going to lose this money. But thankfully, we put it on the market and it sold almost right away. And I made $50,000. Nice. And I was like, wow. I was like, okay, that was awesome. So maybe I should do more of this. Yeah. That's kind of how it all just started for me. It was a fun, thanks to grandma. It was a good little start.
Yeah, that's cool. Cause that felt probably very low stake, being the fact that you just, all the money you needed was for the renovation. You actually didn't need to buy the house. You just took over payments.
Exactly.
How much did you put into the renovation?
It's probably around $12,000, maybe a little bit more. I think something around there.
Wow.
So
you put in about 12 grand and you made 50.
Yeah. Yeah.
In 6 weeks.
Yeah, and I've never done anything like that before. I just was like guessing on everything. I'm like,
That's
I
pretty
think this will
awesome.
look good. So yeah, so that was cool. So that was
While making some mistakes, like you said,
yeah,
with the
yeah.
flooring, the flooding, like that costs you extra money, right?
Yeah, it did. But in the end, it was just, I mean, honestly, just kind of, even when it happened, I laughed a little bit. It was like,
Yeah.
that wasn't that bad.
We call
So,
that paying your dues. You know, you're like,
yeah,
you're learning, like it
exactly.
costs some to learn, but you made money to learn it. So you made 50 grand to learn how to
Right.
flip.
Yeah. Yeah. It was pretty awesome. So, yeah, I mean, so going on from there, basically the thing that I did was I just kind of learned from the experience and was ready to hit the ground running. So as I rounded towards the end of 2022, I was like looking for deals left and right. I'm like, okay, I want to like buy one and really do it. And so I learned about off market deals. I learned about hard money, and I was like, okay, grandma's house is no longer available. We got to move on. And so I just got on all these off market wholesaler lists, which we can talk more about another time and explain me a little bit more of how all of that works. But for me, I got on some email lists of these people that were finding houses in rough condition and then, basically selling the contract of the house to a buyer like me. So I had this one house come through in the end of 2022, and I was just like, man, this is a cool deal. It was in South Nashville, and it was kind of like pre-foreclosure. It had a little bit of red tape, and I just went for it. I was so scared. I remember calling one of my friends who had been doing real estate more than me, and I was like, at what point do you just jump? He's like, you just gotta jump. You just, at some point, you gotta just do it. Otherwise, you're just looking on the sidelines the whole time. And so this house scared me, but I was like, I think there's some meat on the bone here. And so I picked it up off market, or I tried to. I went under contract. And then the team of people I was buying it through, they're like, just kidding, there's a bunch of red tape and you can't buy it yet. So we're going to give you your money back, and that deal's not possible. And I was like, okay, well, let me know when it is. And they came back 2 months later and they're like, now the deal's ready. You have first right of refusal. And I was like, great. But I was like, I know they don't want to relist this house. So I was like, hey, the market shifted. I think I'm willing to take it, but I need to take it for 10 grand less. And they accepted the offer, and I bought my first house. And it was a 3-bed, 2-bath house in South Nashville, next to a meth house on kind of a rough street. I was like, hey, gotta start somewhere. But honestly, again, I just found people on like Thumbtack and Marketplace, and I was like, let's just go for it. So I just managed the project myself. I did not hire like a contractor like a lot of people would do and just offload a lot of the work to them directly. I pretty much just found all the subcontractors and bought all the materials, and I had a hard money lender who lent me the money to buy the house and the money for the rehab, and I was all in for about $300,000 or $310,000. Finished the project in about 6 weeks, then furnished it, decided to keep it. So I refinanced and put it online, and now it cash flows almost $1,000 a month, and I gained about $100,000 in equity. So this was a 6 to 8 week flip, and that was the first house I'd ever actually purchased. So when that happened, and this is when the market's like now officially like really dipping around the country, and everyone's running for the hills. They do not want to be in real estate investing. A lot of people just dropped out, and I'm like, this is sweet. I'm just getting into the game. Like, let's go. Yeah. I was like, I was never part of this game in 2019 or 2020. I don't know the glory days like everybody else does. So for me, these are my glory days, and I'm just going to go for it. So that was a crazy first purchase. And
when you said you brought it online, does that mean you, was that a short-term rental or a long-term rental?
Yeah, so it's a midterm rental. So it's 30 plus days or more, typically 30 to 90 days. But as with a lot of midterm rentals, this basically, I think my renters that are still in there right now, I think they moved in there in like July of last year. So they've been in there since July, and they're paying midterm rental prices. But it's a travel news situation. It's fully furnished. They can have their dogs there. Like, it's a win for them and it's a win for me. So that's what I love about Minter Rentals. And we can certainly talk more about that. But
yeah,
rather than doing short-term rentals, I mean, Nashville, just like a lot of cities is very much cracking down on short-term rentals. So you kind of have to either know the loopholes or do this type of a thing where it's at least 30 days long, because then they're signing a lease and they're legally your renters as if it was a long-term lease agreement, but it's typically a lot shorter.
Right. So what were some of your takeaways from this one? What did you learn from your second flip?
From the second flip, I would say this was the first one I'd ever purchased myself. So I was like managing this to me, a much higher budget, still only like $55,000, which now in hindsight, I'm like, how did I do it for $55,000? That was so cheap. But I was just like finding people in the woodwork and just saying, hey, like I was negotiating like crazy to get things as cheap as possible. Now I would do it a little bit differently, just because the further in I get, the more I realize you don't want to drive people super low in their cost of labor, because when you drive them super low, they're just not as motivated to do a good job. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's just human nature. And I've always been a deal maker, but I just, in this case, like I'm trying to find this sweet spot where someone feels really valued for what they do and they're motivated to do a good job and they want to be a repeat, client of yours. So that's kind of the balance I'm trying to find now. But so that's probably one of the bigger takeaways. There, I had a pretty big miscommunication with the paint crew. I don't speak Spanish. And that was what I really needed to speak to be able to communicate clearly. We had a translator initially, but it's still like we still missed a ton in the translation somehow. And it was sadly a bit of a falling out between me and the paint crew. We've since kind of come back around, but it was one of those things where I'm like, no, I very clearly said this, and they're like, no, you very clearly told us you didn't say that. So stuff like that.
It wasn't in writing. Like you didn't have a contract. It was very much like, hey,
no,
paint all this and I'll pay you cash probably.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's like a few texts back and forth that are like, okay, so I want this color in this, and then we want the trim like this and we want that, it's like that. But no, it was not a paint crew. Like I have several friends that own like high-end paint companies here in the area, but like it's typically not the price point that I'm like trying to find.
It's like for a custom home.
Yeah. They're doing these Franklin houses that are like multi-million dollars. And I'm like, up in the ghetto of Nashville, just making it a better place.
How did you find your contractors and subcontractors?
Yeah. I mean, some of it was word of mouth, but like it was mostly like Facebook Marketplace and Thumbtack, where I liked Thumbtack because it was reviews based, but as I learned, Thumbtack still isn't always the best way to go. So since then I've learned that, in places like Nashville, there's like Facebook groups that have like thousands of people on it that are just for contractors only. And so you can find someone to fix just about anything very quickly at a great price. And there's a lot of reputation at stake there because they know the group will kind of talk if someone doesn't, do a great job or whatever. So now I'll probably do more like that. I mean, now I have a lot more contacts in general for the right type of help. But in the beginning, I didn't know really anyone or anything. And I just was like, I got to get it done. So the project had to keep moving. So if someone didn't do a great job on something, I'd find someone else to come behind them and fix it. And that was really the story of the next house, which is
Can I ask you one more question before you jump in?
Yeah.
I find that a lot of new investors or people wanting to get into real estate, I feel like they have more of a money problem. They're like, hey, I don't have money to invest. They don't really understand the power of OPM, other people's money, the leverage of hard money loans, private money loans. So that's a big like barrier of entry for most people, right?
Yeah.
So what was that like for you finding a hard money lender? Like, how'd you get the confidence to go and approach somebody? And what was that like for you?
I mean, that's a great question, because that really was, I think, one of the main things stopping me before I got involved was, how do I fund this? And it looked very daunting from the outside. And I think even now there's more conversation about hard money lenders, private money lenders. But even a couple of years ago, at least for me, I just didn't know where to find it. And so when I started getting involved in this investor group in Franklin, different people in that crew were like, hey, so-and-so lent me, like one of the guy who started it, his name's Brett Henry. And one day he just sat down with me and he just wrote down this list of, or he just told me all these different private money lenders that he'd worked with and all these different wholesalers, people finding off-market deals that he'd worked with. And he just took time out of his day. It was after work hours. And I remember thinking like, your wife and kids are waiting for you and you're sitting here talking to me about this. And I literally told him that. He's like, hey, we've built in margin to our life. Like, this is life-giving to me to be able to share this information. And it really changed my life because someone just taking that time to tell me those contacts was everything I needed to get going. So I just reached out to a few different people in that list of private money lenders and was like, hey, I have a deal that I found. Would you consider funding it? And, I'm like terrified. So I'm like, I've never done this, but act cool.
So you just called them. You called them on the phone and said, hey, got this deal. Are you interested?
Yeah. I mostly emailed actually. And so I had found this deal that was like off market. And the thing about off market deals like this house I found in Nashville is that you really don't have time to just sit around and like wait on stuff. Yeah. Like it's going to move quick. So if you don't take it, somebody else will. So I just knew I had a tiny window to find someone. So I asked a few people if they'd be interested in funding it, and certain people in the group or certain people were like, yeah, I'd fund like, 80% of it, but you're going to need to have, $20,000 or $30,000. And I was like, that's probably normal, but it's more than I have right now. So that's not going to work. And so I went to another one. I mean, I did have some reserves from selling my grandma's house and other things, but I just didn't want to use it on the house. And so there's a lot of value in just being able to hold on to your reserves for whatever you need to. So I found one lender in particular that was not even based in the area. He was based in Denver, and I called him and told him the deal. And he's like, I'll fund the whole purchase price and I'll fund your whole rehab 100%.
That's
and
amazing.
I was like, oh my gosh.
Those are hard to find.
And I just was like, I mean, the amount of belief that like this guy didn't know me. Yeah. He knew the area well enough and he could see the deal. He could see that I had found a good deal. And so that gave me confidence too. Cause I was like, okay, if he is willing to lend me this money, then surely I'm not terribly blind, right? So we went with it. And suddenly I bought a house with cash, which is one awesome thing about using other people's money is that you can come in as a cash buyer and negotiate. So I closed on the deal in December 2022 and hit the ground running, and we wrapped it up by February. It was pretty much done, inside, outside, completely finished, repainted. I mean, all new, brand new kitchen, brand new bathroom, 2 brand new bathrooms, brand new stairs. I mean, we had all the flooring, all the walls, all the popcorn ceiling, which did have a tiny bit of asbestos in it. But, I
don't think asbestos is that big a deal outside of California. They make a big deal about it. I think honestly, it's to make money.
Hey, this is an interesting topic. I had not heard that before, but all I know is that we took care of it and we're good. But so I mean, it was cool. Like I bought it for $260, put $55 into it, and I've had it. I've just refinanced out of that loan in March of 23. So we're just coming up on, it's still only been like 11 months. And that house today would be worth around $425. So it's about $100,000, maybe $110 in equity on that house. And I have it as a rental. So
that's awesome.
Really cool. I mean, one of the coolest things about that house is that I can actually use that house now to cross collateralize other loans that I get if I need to. It's not my personal, I don't live there. So it's cool to have the leverage towards other deals in the future, which is something I didn't even really realize when I bought it. So
nice. That's amazing. That's a win.
yeah, it was a cool deep dive, I'd say, as a first buy. It was fun.
When you were done with that, tell me, how did you feel?
I was so pumped. Got done with it and I was like, let's go. Like,
were you energized or were you exhausted? Were you stressed?
Yes. All of that. I was stressed and energized and exhausted. And matter of fact, I was so exhausted because I had just done everything myself. Like, as far as like, I subcontracted the workers, or some of them, but I still did some of the work myself. And I had purchased every bit of material myself and was project managing all of it and doing the acquisition and then the refi. And then just like all the parts that a lot of people have teams to do, I was just doing all of it. And like on the side of all of this, I'm still running my other business. So I'm like on Slack and on sales calls in like the Lowe's parking lot, like answering questions about a couple that wants to get married in Norway in 2024. You know, I was like selling these high ticket sales while I'm like, you know, just out buying supplies,
just grinding.
Just, yeah, like how else are you going to do it? Like I was just grateful for the opportunity and it worked. But yeah, so I was pumped and exhausted. And I told myself, I need a break. I need to take a break. That was so much. And then like 2 weeks later, after, I think it was 3 weeks after I refinanced, I was like, well, let me just get back on Zillow and do a little scrolling, just therapeutic. Looking around.
That's not normal. Most people would not say that's therapeutic. Just saying.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know what normal is anymore.
Yeah.
But that's when I found this house in Florida. And I was like, dang it. I think this is probably a really good deal in Panama City Beach, but I'm exhausted and there's no way I can buy this right now. Right. And so I sent the listing to a friend that was an agent down there. And she's like, you want me to walk through it? So I'm like, okay, sure. Walk through it. FaceTime me. So she FaceTimes me from the house. She literally can't breathe because there's like so much dog pee in the carpet.
Oh, wow.
It's like sand fleas all around the house. It's raccoon infested. It's rat infested. I mean, this house was like somehow miraculously still standing, but the location was awesome. And I could see it was a cool shape. I was like, maybe. So she gets on the phone with me and she's like, okay, I literally cannot even breathe in here. So I'm not going to talk much. I'm just going to show you my camera. I'm going to just walk through with my camera. And so she does a walkthrough. And then basically the house goes under contract immediately with another buyer. And I was like, well, there goes that. I guess I'm not doing it. But then my savvy realtor tells the other realtor, hey, if this falls out of contract, tell us before you put it back on market. We might put an offer in. And I was like, okay, yeah, that sounds good. So 3 weeks later, the buyers that were under contract did cancel their contract because they saw how expensive insurance by the ocean in Florida now is, which is a big, big problem down there. And for some reason, I was crazy enough to be like, we'll figure out insurance later. Let's just get the thing under contract. And that is how I bought my house in Florida.
Wow. So how did you buy it? Did you get hard money loan again? Was it the same lender or did you put money down, traditional loan?
Yeah. So I went back to the same lender and I was like, hey, I know you mostly lend in Florida and in Tennessee and Colorado, but how do you feel about a house in Panama City Beach? And he's like, oh yeah, we don't usually do that area. But I mean, he had just seen what I did with this other house. So I think the confidence was like the relationship was growing. And that's really important when you have a private money lender, you know, especially if they're not a broker, but they're the actual lender.
Yeah. Then
it's really important for them to see like what you can do with your portfolio. And I mean, I was even a little surprised. I was like, I guess, you know, it did work. This last house did work. And he saw it. And he had actually come out and walked the property with me while I was flipping it. So he's like, well, if you're willing to cross-collateralize your house in Tennessee that you just finished, I'll give you the full loan for the Florida house. And I was like, okay, I think I can do that. So I put all of my apples in that basket and just went for it. And this house I bought for $365,000 and I put about $75,000 into the flip. And again, totally redid the outside, the inside, the backyard, resodded the whole thing. I mean, we did so much to that
renovation.
house. Yeah, full reno. It wasn't a full gut. Like I would say, it wasn't down to the studs, but it was just a little bit past that.
Like new bathrooms, new kitchen.
Oh yeah. I mean, we had to like cut these old fiberglass alien spaceship shaped showers out of the bathrooms. And so the tricky thing, I mean, that project was crazy because I didn't live there. I didn't have anywhere to like live. I remember driving down there, staying at my friend's dad's like mansion 10 minutes down the road in Rosemary Beach. And I was like, this would be nice to stay here for the next 2 months, but that is not feasible. So she went back up to Tennessee and I was suddenly like, I remember literally being like, I thought I was going to be able to camp in this house, but I literally could not even camp in the house. Like it was so bad. You couldn't even barely breathe in there. Like it was bad. And so I was like, I'm not on this level of like camping in this. This would be like close to just, it's homeless. Bad. So yeah, like, so I stayed like one night in a hotel and I just remember like praying and be like, God, where do I live now? I texted my realtor and I was like, do you know anybody around here that I could like pay to stay in an extra room? She's like, yeah, I know this lady. Maybe reach out to her. So I reached out to this lady and she's like, yeah, you can rent my extra room for like $40 a night. And I was like, sold. We'll do that. So this lady I didn't even know, I just moved into her house and then I flipped this house.
How long did you stay there? Did you stay there the whole renovation or were you going back and forth to Tennessee?
Yeah. So I ended up staying that first run. I think I stayed about 3 weeks at Vicky's house. God bless Vicky. Yeah. Which credit to Vicky. She was like, I don't know. She's a little bit older, but she had remodeled her house almost entirely herself, including some electrical. And I was very impressed with Vicky. So Vicky's got it going on. But so I took about 3 weeks and stayed there, did as much as I could, managing everything. And then I was like, I got to go home for like a week. I went home, reconnected with everything there. And I was like, I guess I got to go back down. And so by the time I got back down after that first month of renovation, the house was enough fixed up that I could at that point kind of camp in one of the bedrooms. Kitchen was still not finished, but one of the bathrooms was good enough that I could sleep there. So I did end up staying there about half the time, and I stayed at Vicky's and a hotel in my friend's house, like the other part of the trip. So because it adds up, like that's a destination place. And if I would have been renting a hotel room every single night for that, like that would have been like thousands of dollars that I did not have budgeted.
Yeah.
So
did you?
Yeah, it was kind of wild.
Did you create a line item or budget salary for yourself? Did you pay yourself to do it, or how did that work?
I did not pay myself to do it. I haven't paid myself to do any of the projects because I still have income coming in from my other business. I'm typically able to live off of that and then just do these in between. So, and
that's
then I just
nice.
and I just view my income as like whatever I get when the project's done. I mean, there's probably times where I use some of the budget for like a meal out here and there, or if I'm out buying supplies or whatever. But I'm usually pretty careful about keeping it mostly all within like the labor and material budget as much as I can.
So was it challenging to find contractors, subs in a different state? Were you pulling on the relationships from your realtor? Were they connecting you with different people, or were you just like posting up at Home Depot asking like, hey, like first person you see is carrying lumber, like, yo, are you a framer? Can you come up by the house?
Yeah. My realtor, I was like, do you know anybody that could like maybe help with some of this? She's like, honestly, the thing you'll learn about the workers down here is that a lot of people walk off on the jobs. Like it is just part of the culture.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if it's beach culture. I'm not sure what it is. And in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, but I'm going to be better at vetting these people. Like I'm usually pretty good at like, I can suss things out pretty well. Dude, she was not wrong. That did happen to us multiple times on this project. And thankfully, I hadn't paid anyone like large amounts of money that it was such a loss that it was devastating. But we did have a couple different guys that helped on the project that, first of all, one of them had claimed he could do all this stuff. And he actually like installed certain things like so poorly that it had to be, my dad actually came down and like fixed so much stuff. And some of the things my dad fixed was after the second guy had fixed what the first guy couldn't fix. And so it was like, some of it was like fixed like 3 times. And so it was so crazy. But again, because I'm just getting the best deal as much as I can. And it was rough because there were many, many moments where I was like, okay, this is very, very frustrating.
Hard conversations, absolutely. And you know, I don't even need to get into all of it, but it was a rough go, and culturally very different than doing work in Tennessee. I do think that I don't know if it's like beach culture, something like a little more chill, like / a little bit lazy. I don't know. I don't want to say I know it's not the same for everybody, but in my case, just some of the people that I worked with just didn't have the highest priority for follow through and finishing with excellence. But you know, I found one Brazilian guy in Destin who was doing like tile and bathroom and flooring and stuff, and he knocked it out of the park. Dude gave me such a great price. He was such a hard worker. He had a great crew. He hardly spoke any English, but he was really good about following through with me to make sure that this is exactly what I want. This is the exact material we're going to have. I mean, I would work with him. Matter of fact, I've had many times where I'm like, can I fly to Tennessee? Cause like, you know, when you find a good worker like that, you're like, please, how can I
come
keep them
with
busy?
Me?
They're like gold.
Yeah. So he was definitely kind of like a shining light in the middle of a lot of other hard situations with workers, but we got it done, and we still did it in about 6 to 8 weeks, furnished the whole thing, put it on Airbnb, and it immediately booked out. I mean, I was just mind blown when I first got on Airbnb, I was like, who's going to see through this to like, surely they're going to know this house was like terrible 2 months ago. And it just, this feeling in me that's like, am I cheating them? Because this like was rat infested 2 months ago, you know? And then everything just finishes and we get these professional photos taken and the place looks immaculate.
Yeah.
And we get guests coming in, and I think we're now, you know, we're like 6-7 months in now, and we have basically like only 5-star reviews, and it's a guest favorite, and it's been absolutely like so well received. And I'm like, all right, I think it's real. This is sticking. This house actually is nice now. So
tell me about the numbers. Like, you know, what did you buy it for? You said you put in about 70, 75. Is that right?
So I bought it for $365, which in that neighborhood that it's in, again, it's West Panama City Beach. So it's about 5 to 6 minutes to the start of 30A, which is a very popular white sandy beach, cozy little village area of all these little beach villages. Rosemary Beach, Alice Beach is like 10 minutes from the house. And that's a very, very nice area, very high dollar for real estate. So my house is like 10 minutes from there, and it's a cool little hack because it's an actual house. It's not a condo. It's about 5-minute walk to the water. You can hear the waves from the backyard, and, you know, I've got a golf cart, and it's just this cozy little oasis. And so, that neighborhood now, most houses are, you know, decent houses similarly are selling for closer to 700,000. And so the fact that I got it on market for 365 was crazy, but like I said, it was pretty rough. So I put about 75 into it. By the time, you know, closing costs and everything happened with the refinance, I was all in at like 487. And so before getting the refinance, I knew that I had to get an appraisal, and I was so nervous for the appraisal. We were talking about this with Cave Springs, and it's like that moment of just tension of waiting for the appraisal is just like, oh, please God, like, please. And the whole time I'm like, they're going to know this house is just crazy. Like, they're going to see through everything. And so the appraisal came back at 655. And I was mind blown.
What were you targeting? What was like your goal? Like I needed the value to come in at what number?
Yeah, I needed it to come in at like at least 625, but even that to me felt like really high. So I was like, I bought this house for 365, and I put like 75 into it. Mm-hmm. But it's just the value of the area. And I just was unfamiliar with the area. And my realtors were like, no, it's going to come in for higher. And I was like, okay, I hope you're right. And they were totally right. It actually came in for even more. So
that created $200,000 of equity.
Yeah. In a 6-week flip.
That's cool.
The second one in a row. So yeah, I think by that point I was just like, okay, we just did 2 of these in a row. This, like, if I would have sold these houses, I'd have around 300,000 cash from 6 months of work. And I've never done this before. Like, what in the world?
Yeah.
And so funny because we didn't talk about this earlier, but I'm single. I'm not married. I don't have a husband. I don't have a family. And so I'd even have like contractors or people come walk the house and give me quotes, basically expecting that my husband was about to show up and they were going to talk to him. And I had other moments where my dad came down and I was getting quotes from people when my dad's walking with me, and the guys would just immediately just talk to my dad about everything because they're just assuming that it's his house.
He's making decisions.
Yeah. And so my dad's like, it's not my house, it's her house. So I just had to be like, it's just me over here doing this. So I think, it was just a wild journey with all of that for sure.
Yeah. I want to hear more about that. Like being a single lady, investing, dealing with contractors. What was that like for you? I mean, besides that, those moments where you maybe, did you feel small? Like how did that make you feel, like, dealing with contractors?
Yeah. Well, there in the Nashville house, the guy I ended up hiring who did most of the work basically fell in love with me. And he was
some pros.
It was just kind of awkward, but I kind of just was like, and he was kind of funny about it. So we were able to still work through it, but I was just like, bro, look.
He was like, hey, let's go get dinner tonight.
Yeah, he would be like that. And I was like, nah. It's like, sorry, like I'm your boss. I'm your friend, but like hardly even that.
Okay. And so you let him know I'm your boss.
Oh yeah. I had to be extremely assertive with it. Otherwise he would just be, it's more cultural for him too, I think, to be more flirty and all that. And I'm like, hey, like, no, you can't do that. And then on the Florida house, that was frustrating sometimes because I think some of them, especially when things got hard with some of them, I don't think they enjoyed the fact that I was a woman, kind of, that was technically their boss in that moment. And that I think was kind of frustrating for some of them. But I just try to be as kind as possible, but also assertive. And I think there's a balance there where you don't want people to walk all over you, but you also just want to make sure that people know that like they can't just do anything either, So I've had to
boundaries.
I've had to get a lot, I guess, thicker skin when it comes to some of those conversations, just like, hey, like this thing that you did, or like walking up on the job. And if someone's in the middle of, this happened on the last house, grouting some backsplash and, it's like the tiles are crooked and I'm literally walking up and I'm like, hey man, everything looks really good, but like, there's just this one spot here. Could you go ahead and like straighten that out a little bit? And then the guy was like, it's like tricky because of this outlet and this thing. And then he moves it with his hands. And he's like that? I'm like, perfect. Just like that. Like it's those things where you have to actually call it out and not just let it happen. And that's something I think I'm learning as I go. And I'm sure you have tons of stories about that, but
quality control, like you have to speak up. They're not going to care about it the same way you care about it.
Yeah, exactly.
They want to get it done and they want to get paid. Most people.
Yeah, that's true.
But there are contractors out there that really do care and that are craftsmen and they care about their work. And those are the people you want to have on your team forever.
Yep.
But even with them, sometimes they'll cut corners or they'll miss things, and you got to pay attention. You have to look at it. I think it's so important to really look at their work closely before you pay them.
Yeah, Absolutely.
Like if you don't
Yeah.
and you pay them and you see some done later, it is what it is.
Several moments where thankfully going into all this, I do think I had heard enough podcasts about people saying like, never pay huge amounts up front for your work. Like, and so I would pay people like a little bit here, I do maybe a small deposit here and there, but like really mostly like trying to find people that are willing to do the work and then get paid. And then that gives me the chance to do a walkthrough. But even with walkthroughs, it's really easy to miss stuff when there's so much happening at once. Because even like on this house in Florida, there were days where I was moving so fast. I had like 10 people in there and probably 7 of them were like independent of each other. So these aren't like a crew of 10. This is like people that I've gathered through all my ways of like finding them, all my channels, and hiring them all separately, and then just like putting them to work. And so there's a whole like rhythm to making sure that people are like not getting in each other's way, or like, the plumbing guy isn't shutting off water for the electrical guy, and the electrical guy isn't shutting off water for the, so you kind of have to, that happened a bunch too. And I was like, oh, I never thought of this. Like
the whole scheduling and making sure they're not stepping on each other's toes. Managing a project is a lot of details that a lot of people don't realize. And there's an order for things, but there's also, when you're trying to get things done quickly, it doesn't always fall in that order. And you might have to move things around and get some done maybe before you'd like to get done.
Exactly.
So it's kind of this strategic puzzle piece that you got to like play around and move things around to get done. And that's why problem solving is probably one of the biggest skill sets for flippers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Problem solving, negotiation, those two together. And how many times, you could probably say too for yourself, like how many times we have calls coming in from the delivery truck or whatever, and they're like, sorry, like we can't get it till you were scheduled for today, but now we have to bring it next Tuesday, and you're like, oh yeah, hey, like it's not going to work for me. Like I can't do that. Yeah. And so just trying to like go up the chain of command to just get what you need done. And I'll get feisty with it, but with a little smile. Okay. The feisty smile. Like, hey, smile. Like we got to do it. So, let's work together. And so often there is another way to do it than just like that first version of it. Right. So
what would you say your biggest takeaways from this flip would be?
The Florida flip? Yeah, the Florida one. I would definitely say that, man, there was just, honestly, when I finished it and I got home, it felt like whiplash, because it was so much that had happened in like 3 months that I like emotionally had to kind of like decompress from the whole situation. And I realized I had been very poorly treated by some of the contractors that I think if I was a guy in this situation, I would have just let it roll off my back a little bit more. And I tried to in the moment, but I got home and was just like, yeah, I'm a girl. like this just, it hurts. And I don't like not, I'm not used to being not liked. Yeah. And so if someone's, treating me poorly or whatever, like it just hit a little differently. And I think I just had to learn, like, it's part of the game. And this is also part of what happens when you're like trying to drive that like labor price as low as you can with still getting decent work. I think that's some of the lessons I've learned this year is like, I got it all done, but certainly with a much higher emotional expense, even if it's not a financial expense, it cost me either way. So if I can begin to build more margin into my future budgets to where I can just make a little bit of a step up with some of these things, I think it'll be a lot easier to get the help that I need and want, Yeah. So
taking care of your contractors, paying them well, finding the right people, you pay for what you get, right? In the long run.
Yeah.
And just, one thing that I love about your story is that you're not making excuses. You're not letting the fact that you're single, you're a woman, you're not letting that control or persuade you to stop. Like you're facing fears, you're tackling challenges, you're doing hard things, and it's proven yourself. Like, you're getting these wins, you're creating momentum.
Thank
right?
you. Yeah.
So I think that's really cool. And I think a lot of single people out there just need to hear that. Like, you don't need to wait. It could be a guy or a girl,
Totally.
being single,
Yeah.
like, you don't have to wait to get married, to buy real estate, to buy a home, to invest. If it's something you want to do and you have vision for, like, do it now. Right.
Yeah. And that's absolutely my heart too, is because I'm like, I just meet, especially women. I meet a lot of women that are just like, have been waiting a long time to get married. And in that process, I think some of them have lost the drive to like dream for themselves. They're kind of caught in this holding pattern. And that's just something I have a passion for, seeing people get out of that holding pattern and absolutely like do what you need to do to like prepare your heart for marriage. But there is something to be said about going after your dreams and building a legacy of wealth and abundance. Because even in my case, I'm like, I don't have my own kids personally, but I have an amazing family. I have 2 nieces and a nephew, and I have 2 godsons, and I have these 5 little kids in my life that are just like absolutely precious. And you better believe that every bit of what I'm building right now is unto making their lives more amazing. So, and I just want to be generous. Like, I want to be able to build a life that when someone does come into it, Lord willing, in the future, that it is something where we get to partner together from 2 places of abundance, and not just like, dude has an awesome job and he's going to just support me. Like, I want to be able to come in and say, hey, like, would you like to go to the beach house this weekend?
There we go.
And honestly, the further I get into this, the more it kind of filters out people that are just like legit intimidated to be with a woman that has built a level of independence and abundance, So I'm like, if it's not for you, that's fine.
Yeah, it's not for me. Exactly. It's like, you attract who you are, not what you want.
Yeah.
So if you become high level, if you become this rock star, that's what you're going to attract. Like, if you're sitting on the couch playing video games, you're not going to attract that supermodel, right? That you're like, oh, I want to marry this like beautiful person who's in shape and they're running and they're doing races and they're athletic. Like, that's not going to attract that person. Like, you got to be out there doing those things that attracts them. And so it's cool that you're realizing like, hey, this is actually a blessing, because it's weeding out the people that I don't care about, that wouldn't be a good fit.
Yeah, that's right. And, it's been really, really cool to see in my own community here in Nashville and other places too, the different, especially single female women single women that are coming to me, in similar stages of life. And they're like, okay, how are you doing this? Like, I actually have a little cash, or I have like been working and I'd love to get involved. And so now I'm getting to walk my friends through ways to build wealth. And it's so fun, because it's like, these are all things that a lot of women kind of maybe wait for like a husband to walk them through or whatever. And I'm like, don't wait. Like, it's so rewarding. So yeah, I just hope that this story can certainly be encouraging to not just women, but obviously a lot of singles in general. Cause it's just absolutely doable, even if you're not married.
That's amazing. So what's next for you? Like, what does this year look like in the next 3-5 years? Like, what are you aiming for?
I'm just chasing the wind of Benjamin Goodpasture. So, it's like resorts, all these things.
Okay.
No, I mean, seriously, I've been so inspired by your Cave Springs purchase. And I think that direction would be so fun. I'd love to do like a boutique hotel. Definitely want to do more in the short-term rental markets. But because my other company does micro weddings in these places like Glacier National Park and the Cliffs of Ireland and Norway, I would like to start to buy properties in those places to be able to do like weddings on our properties instead of we've spent thousands of dollars over the years renting other venues. So this is kind of feels like a bit of a crossover where I can bring both of those worlds together, but certainly more flips and rentals. Right now I'm kind of diving a little bit into private lending and getting involved on that side and just learning as much as I can. And also just loving the chance to build this podcast and build this community, just because it's communities like this that made it possible for me to invest it all. And it all happened really fast. So maybe it's not everyone's pace to go at my pace, but you know, maybe there are some people out there that are just like, what are the steps I can take to just dive in right now? You know? So
yeah, that's cool.
Kind of
So boutique hotel.
Yeah.
When are you going to do that by?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'd say maybe I'd be down this year to kind of like do a few more single family, because like even right this week I have like a venue in Montana that I'm looking at with a wholesaler out there, and it's like I'm not physically looking at it, but I'm looking into the possibility of it, and that would be like not a boutique hotel, but it would have land to do like little weddings out there.
Okay.
So stuff like that, I do want to pursue that probably before a boutique hotel potentially. But hey, if the deal is good enough, like I'm open. So I'm always looking, and probably I'd say within the next year, I'd like to do something with the boutique hotel dream.
That's interesting, the land idea, because, you know, one thing about land is it's pretty normal to have owners that will finance it for you, owner carry. So you could find land, have weddings there. You don't have to go through a bank, potentially have an owner finance it for you.
Absolutely.
And have weddings. So it's kind of like you're merging your two businesses a little bit, right?
Yeah, it's the dream. It's the dream. I'm like, man, all these years. So like, I understand how to build out wedding venues now. I understand a lot of what's needed and what it takes. So I've kind of toyed with the idea of like, I could probably do some consulting for that and help people build out venues, but it's not really the direction I want to go. I'd rather stick to, you know, investing on my side and then buying a few that like are key locations for us. And then I want to do Sedona, Arizona is one of the places out by Glacier.
Like land or property?
Either land that I can build some kind of like potential like big A-frame type thing out in the desert, or something that's already existing, but I think it'll probably have to be built out there from what I'm finding. So yeah, there's a few different places on the radar for sure.
Well, I'm excited about the whole consulting thing because, you know, since we're doing this podcast and I'm, you know, Cave Springs, I'm going to make that a wedding venue. So through this podcast, you get to give me free consulting because we're in this together. I think that's a bro deal.
That's right.
Kind of thing.
That's right.
You can practice your consulting with me so that you can get better at it since it's new.
Hey, you know what? With the right kind of trade and credit to stay out there at Cave Springs and your Mount Shasta chalet, I got you.
We'll see. We'll talk about credits. I think I don't know if there's enough credits for you to get all that, but I'm just kidding. That's cool. Well, that's really inspiring. I think what you've accomplished in a year is pretty amazing. I know you're selling another flip, right?
Yeah, we did. And like, I can just keep that short, but I, with my friend, I JV'd, did a joint venture on a farmhouse, just outside Franklin, Tennessee this last fall. So that's currently on the market, and we should clear, I'd say we should clear somewhere between 200 to 240 on that.
Really? That's amazing.
Which was an absolute, just very, very cool find. Now it hasn't closed yet, so of course we won't know until it closes, but it should be somewhere in that range. There was quite a bit of margin on that. And he had never done a deal, but he found this deal. I walked it while he was out of town. He bought it sight unseen, and then we ended up partnering, and it's a really cool farmhouse on 2.5 acres just outside Franklin. So it's really the land on this one that's the high value because the county is awesome. So yeah, that was a wild one as well, but we'll save the stories for another time.
Yeah.
On that.
Yeah, we should deep dive into that on one of the episodes. That's cool. Yeah. So last question, if you were to say start over again with investing, flipping, let's say you start maybe 10 years ago, what would you tell your younger self? Like, what advice would you give yourself if you're starting over again in real estate?
That's a great question. I think the first thing I would do is, instead of like, I'm really grateful that I had all that time reading books and listening to podcasts. I think that's very much part of the process unnecessary. But I think I wish I would have found people locally faster to, and I know that like you can't just create that out of thin air, but now with like Facebook and all these different real estate groups, like there's usually somewhere to meet people that are doing similar things. So it was really when I got connected on a local level that I felt the confidence to jump in. So I think wherever you are, finding people that are already doing it, even if you're just like offering to help them for free or just take them out to coffee. Like if you find a willing soul to just listen to you and give you advice, like do it, because that is absolutely what changed the game for me. And it was those people that gave me the contacts I needed to get the lenders and get the wholesalers and get my little team together. Because without that, I just had information that I was hearing in like national podcasts. So like, you know, the podcasts I was listening to were awesome, but they didn't really know who would be a local hard money lender for a flip in Franklin, you know? So getting those local contacts is absolutely priceless wherever you are. And then just doing it, jumping in and doing it for sure. I would do it quicker if I would have known the contacts, like I would have done it faster, I think.
Taking action.
Yeah, for sure.
That's cool. I think kind of just reflect on what you're saying. It's that old saying. It's not what you know, it's who you know. It's those connections. It's that saying your network is your net worth kind of thing. And you just hear high level people saying this all the time. So it must be something that they've learned along the way, and it's worked for you, which is amazing. And your story is impressive. Just what you've been able to achieve in such a short period of time. Obviously, it's, you know, there's been some scars and some blood, sweat, and tears along the way, but that's the journey. That's the process. That's really where you learn, you know, like
that's right.
You've gotten a PhD in real estate quickly because you've done it versus, you know, reading books and all that stuff is great. It builds up your confidence, but I don't think it really teaches you enough of what you need to know to actually like do a deal.
I mean, I think it's the same in almost any industry, right? You think about being a doctor or anything else. It's like you can get trained as much as you can get trained. At the end of the day, like until you actually do the thing, like you don't really see all sides of how it works. And I just remember diving in and even doing my first deal and going to like the closing to the title company and just being like, so I could feel my blood pressure, my heart rate are just like through the roof. Cause I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing? And then she shows me what's called the Alta, is basically, you know, the line items on the closing sheet where you see like who's getting paid what. And, you know, this is going to this and this is going to this and this. And it was the first time I'd really ever even looked at that, because I'd never even bought like a personal residence. And I was like, this is like the guts of all the things it's like, this has all been like blurry. Like I've known that you go to the closing table, but I don't know what is in these, like what's in the paper. You know,
Did you read like every single thing in the content or the statements?
No, like there's tons of pages, and the closing lady was like, this means this means this, this means this. And she just flip. And I'm like, cool. I believe you. But then it's that Alta, the part where you're like, okay, how much am I paying out to this lender? And how much am I paying out to the wholesaler? And how much am I paying out to this? And to see that all broken into kind of like a spreadsheet format, I was like, I had this moment where I'm like, this is the stuff you don't see in a podcast. Like you got to just like get in there and do the thing and feel the pain of like, shoot, I didn't know that much money went to look up my title. Like I didn't know that much money goes to title search or title insurance. And now I feel way more informed because I did it. But a lot of it just happened by being in the moment and just being like, we're in this deep. Here we go.
Yeah. So I think that one of the biggest takeaways is like, choose who you want to be surrounded by. Like the people the 5 closest people are really like what you'll become. And I think about my nephew and the fact that he's buying his 3rd property.
So awesome.
And he's 24 years old and he's done this in like a year and a half. And it's because his dad, my brother, he's a real estate investor, hard money lender. Cool. I'm an investor. He took my mentorship.
So awesome.
And he's around us. He's surrounded by us. And we're, for lack of better words, like we're leaking what we do. And when he's around it, we push him, we challenge him, but he's also asking questions. He wants it. And so just having that close proximity with people doing it makes a massive difference. Like if you surround yourself with investors doing it, you will do it too.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. We have an office, kind of a co-working space here in Franklin where a lot of these investor friends of mine just kind of do their business, and there's kind of like just open spaces and some private offices. But it's kind of to the point now where I just show up once or twice a week for the sole purpose of just rubbing shoulders with people that are doing it. Yeah. Because it is crazy when I walk in that room and have no other agenda except for connection and like just being available. It's crazy. The opportunities have just come to me because I'm just in the room, or I'm just trying to make space for it. And I think that's where I'm like, man, find ways to rub shoulders with people that are already doing these things. And that's the space. And I've known that for years. I've always been like, yeah, that's what they say. Just go find the people. But how do you just find them, But I think that's one of those things where when you start to make effort to go after it, like it'll just happen. Like you got to keep looking. If you don't find it, just keep looking until you find it. It's there, So go to every conference you can. You're going to meet people there. Like there's always places to meet people. So yeah, just, I don't know. It gets me pumped. I'm so just love all this stuff.
That's cool. Well, you can see the confidence and the excitement is real. Like you've experienced it. It works. It's blessing you. It's serving people. Where do people find you if they want to see what you're doing?
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at Kayla Potterbaum, KaylaPotterbaum. You can find me there. Right now, it's still a lot of like landscape photos from when I lived in Norway. But the landscape is shifting and there will be more real estate happening in there. So that's a good spot to just connect. And what about you, Benjamin? Where can we find you?
Well, before I do that, I'm like, why are you not posting photos of like what you're doing? You're still in like photography land.
I know it's so bad. It's because I had, when I lived in Norway, I had some photos that went viral. And so a lot of the followers that I have are like hardcore, like Norway landscape photo followers. Sure. And so I think I've been a little bit like, probably going to lose a fair amount of people once we make the shift, but it's cool. I'm not really living in the mountains right now. Yeah. I am doing houses. So yeah.
It's time to flip the switch.
That's right. Got to get in there
and do
that
narrative, right?
That's right. But you're doing it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I did it. It helped. So I recommend it. But whenever you're ready, you do it. It'll be good. But good. I'm at Benjamin Goodpasture on Instagram. I'm also on YouTube. Also goodpasturehomes.com if you want to see kind of my portfolio. I'm getting over a cold still. It's like latched on and will not go away.
Oof. Yeah.
But hey, awesome hanging out with you. Loved hearing your story. I mean, it's so amazing to hear like, just how you did that so quickly and that anyone could do it.
Thank you.
And thanks for sharing all those nuggets. And back to work. I gotta start getting this refi done. So I gotta get back in the grind. So that's it.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. It was super fun. And we will see you guys next time.
Heck yeah. All right. Signing off.
Peace.